take a look, and the bidding will stop at 8 p.m. All right. Next up, we are going to bring Sgt Bojorquez. So to better understand the challenges we face in our own communities, we are honored to welcome Sgt Richard Bojorquez from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. He's a 36-year law enforcement veteran and Navy veteran. Sgt Bojorquez has devoted his career to helping those in crisis find healing. As a leader of the Veteran Mental Evaluation Team, he connects struggling veterans to the resources they need, reminding us that freedom begins when someone chooses to see the person behind the pain. Tonight, he'll share valuable insight into the realities of local human trafficking efforts and how we can all play a role in prevention and protection. Please welcome the Sergeant.
Hello, Sgt Richard Bojorquez. I got 36 years with the LA County Sheriff's Department, so I've learned to be long-winded. So this presentation I'm going to make, it's about 2 hours long. So I'm glad to give you pens, so I expect you to take notes. Okay. So the reality is I'm going to give you a brief introduction into what I know and what I've learned. And I'm going to take a 2-hour presentation and crunch it into about 10 or 15 minutes. So thank you all for being here. I think one of the most important aspects, like the mayor said, is building community around this cause and bringing awareness. How is it that we know every stats of the Dodgers or the Yankees or football team or whatever, but we're not really aware of this horrible, horrible part of life that we have to face with human trafficking. The fact that children have to suffer through this, and it continues to go on. I'm a member of a 10,000 man and women department, and we don't have the resources necessary to combat human trafficking the way it should be. And to me, that's a shame. It's heartbreaking. So I'll just give you a few of the stats, some information, and I'll give you a few stories. Hopefully, what you take away from this tonight is that this cause is a worthy cause, and that we all should be sharing and building communities and structures around education, one of the pillar components of what Leaving the Jar does, and developing your voice. If you don't have a voice, it's time to get one, because these people who suffer in this, and what we're talking about is human trafficking and also sex trafficking, which also affects children. And if we're not down for the cause of protecting children, then I don't know what we're doing here. So, human trafficking is the exploitation of people through force, fraud, coercion, or purposes such as forced labor, sex, and indentured service. And I'll be touching on all 3 of these with one of the stories that I'll give you a little bit. But forced labor is just that, right? We all heard of sweatshops, not just children. A lot of times they are children, but people that are working, in horrific conditions, aren't getting paid much if they're getting paid at all. Usually like a slavery type of situation. And I've seen that throughout LA County. I was blessed to be a member of the gang enforcement team in Lakewood for a period of time. And Lakewood is a very community-oriented and very supportive community. There are parts of it that aren't able to get the attention they get, and so you'd be surprised what happens in such a beautiful community where you see everything going on, everything on the surface goes straight until you start peeling back the layers of the onion. Let me ask the question. I know we were raising hands, and I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot, but has anybody ever eaten at one of those taco stands, coming home from a ball game or coming home late at night? Right? Raise your hand if you've ever ate one of the street tacos in East LA. They're the best you can ever eat. Just keep that in mind. Remember, You're not admitting to anything, and I'll clear that up later on. Can we go to the next one? So there's an estimated 50 million people trafficked worldwide. I don't know if you guys are aware of that, and I'm sure that number has risen since I gathered these stats. Sex trafficking, the sex part of it, is about 20%. Actually, it's a little higher than that. That's what we've heard, or what's been reported, and what we were able to capture. It's probably a lot higher than 20%. Every country is affected, and forced labor is a common reason for trafficking. So, I told you I'd tell you a story about the tacos. Again, remember street tacos, right? They're delicious. They're great. How many of you people, how many are aware that that is a form of human trafficking? And it encompasses a lot more than just forced labor. It actually touches on sex trafficking. It touches on coercion and gang involvement and extortion and a lot more things. When I was in East LA, I was a sergeant there. I ran a special problems team, and part of my duty was, and I felt horrible about it, was to help the Department of Health go and shut down these mom and pop organizations of, basically the taco vendors, the fruit vendors, the tamale vendors, different times of the day. But mostly it was the taco carts that are set up along Whittier Boulevard and different places throughout East LA. And I felt bad because early on, I thought, why am I putting mom and pop out of business? They're just people trying to make a living. Leave them alone. And I was kind of torn up about doing that. And after doing it a while and developing informants and people to help me kind of understand, why this even exists, I found out that in East LA especially, it's controlled by cartels. Mm-hmm. And so when I heard that, I didn't believe it. So I set up a surveillance by myself in an unmarked van just to watch and observe and see what's going on. And I thought, because I just had, my wife and I, we just had a party at the house. I bought like 60 pounds of meat, and it was gone in like an hour. And I thought, how are these people able to set up and sell tacos all night long from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m.? Never ran out of anything. Don't run out of meat. Don't run out of onions. Nothing. They're constantly being resupplied. And I thought, wow, that's a well-oiled machine. They're really going. They got their stuff together. And then I started doing a deeper investigation, more investigation. Then we had a murder behind one of them. And our homicide was handling the murder part, and I was trying to find out information about why it happened. Well, it turned out that somebody thought that they could just set up their own little cart, start selling tacos and making money on the street without paying a price, without paying to the local gang members or even the local cartels that were running it. Then as I looked deeper, there's a component of human smuggling that came into the picture, where I found out that the people who run these things want the free or almost free labor. It's basically free labor, indentured servitude. They would bring, mostly from Mexico, they would bring either a father and a daughter or a mother and a son, people that have no ties, barely speak the language, and definitely no ties to the area, so they couldn't get any help for any reason. They'd bring them up with the promise that if you work for us, you pay off your debt for getting you here, and eventually you'll be able to bring the rest of your family. So what they do is they send them up in, shady hotel rooms, mostly converted garages, and then they charge them rent to be there, so it's not free. And then, so the father, if they brought a father and a daughter, and the daughter sometimes, usually was anywhere from 6 to 14 years of age. Doesn't speak the language, is not enrolled in school, has nothing to do, and while daddy's gone, they basically are sitting at this converted garage watching TV. And so once they develop a pattern where the father would go, his job would be to cut the meat, make the tacos, hand it out, somebody else collects the money, and that's his job for the whole night, from about 6 6 p.m. to about 2 a.m. What we found out later through informants and through uncovering more of this stuff was, while the father was at work, somebody was going and getting a daughter and grooming her and threatening her life and telling her, you're gonna now work in the sex business. And taking her from the house, and because father was gone so long, they were able to take her and put her into either massage parlors or wherever, sell her out. When she would get back home, she'd make it home before dad came back, and they would tell her, if you tell anybody, we'll kill you, we'll kill your father, we'll kill your mom and your brother that's back home. And so that to me was disturbing, because I thought, man, I'm contributing to this simply by buying those tacos off the street, and everybody involved thinks the same way I was thinking early on. I'm just supporting some people that are just trying to make it in life, but I'm actually not. I'm supporting an organization that brought him here for nefarious reasons. So that's just one aspect I wanted to bring up. A lot of people don't realize it. As a matter of fact, while I was working in East LA, they put an injunction against enforcement on my team to not enforce those issues. And later on, they made it legal. So anybody could just set up taco stands everywhere, and it's a free-for-all. And we have these designated areas that it can happen, and everybody believes they're helping out. They're helping families thrive. And that's still not the case, because all those areas are controlled either by gang members, by cartels, by local whoever, by people who are in the business. And I'm not saying all those businesses are cartel related, but you're definitely not gonna be their competition if you think you're gonna come into the neighborhood and take over and take money out of their mouths. And that's actually how the murder happened. It was simply that. They set up in somebody else's territory, didn't have permission to be there, and had no intention on paying into the cause, and was murdered for it. So that's just one aspect. If we can go to the next slide. So, as we know, human trafficking recruitment tactics. I was talking to the young lady at the table, and I recognize two of the biggest recruitment tactics are befriending and boyfriending. You get a lot of these, again, like I explained, you get a lot of these young people who are isolated. They're looking for love. They want attention. They crave that, because maybe they're not getting that at home. Maybe their parents don't have both parents at home, or both parents are working to try and make a living. I myself was a latchkey kid. I raised my siblings. I was the oldest. So we were vulnerable in that state to human trafficking. Thank God I grew up in a time where that almost didn't exist. We still left our doors open. Your neighbors watched out for each other. We had more community back then than I believe we do now. I see it. And, if I did something wrong, my neighbor was calling my dad, and I was hearing about it. And I was being disciplined for it. That happened. It doesn't happen anymore. People are too detached. People don't want to engage. They don't want to get involved because they don't want any trouble. I think for this cause, it's worth getting in trouble. It's worth getting involved. It's worth saying something, at least. Because if you think your government, your local police, your sheriff's department, if you think we got the answers, we don't. Because it's only, in my 36 years in law enforcement, it's only gotten worse. It hasn't gotten better. Kind of like the homeless situation. And which is another vulnerable group of people. When you're homeless, you're desperate. You have no resources, you have no support, and what happens? You're very vulnerable to the predators that are out there who want to lure you into this type of lifestyle for their gain, not yours. So I think we all understand that. Again, the at risk for human trafficking is what's been mentioned. A lot of our youth. I believe the most vulnerable are children and people that don't have a voice. Now that could be either, as was mentioned before, was mentally disabled, autistic children, but not only that, is In my opinion, I've worked with a lot of organizations who help foster care children. Foster care children, in my opinion, are the most abused children in the world. They don't have a voice. So, warning signs of human trafficking, it just depends on how close you are. You're not gonna be able to recognize it. It's not really obvious unless you get intimately involved. Like being a teacher and seeing that kid day after day after day and noticing the changes in patterns, the changes in behavior. If we're parents to kids that are becoming teenagers, a lot of times those changes in patterns and stuff, we just chalk that to they're going through something. They're changing. They're teenagers. That's just what teenagers do. Sometimes it's not. There's a lot of older people who were brought into this, and that mostly kind of encompasses the labor parts. I've raided a lot of sweatshops in East LA where you have people that are 70, 80 years old working behind sewing machines, just making clothing, don't even know why they're there. They're locked up in the morning, they're let out at night, come back tomorrow. So, looking at the vulnerable and trying to find warning signs, that's gonna be up to you and how deep you wanna dive into a relationship with somebody. If you wanna get involved with an organization like this, that will give you the education to help combat this. But you guys are all here for a purpose. You're here for a reason. What is that reason? We wanna help change what's going on. So becoming involved in an organization like Leading the Jar, becoming involved in your community, again, from a peace officer who's 36 years on the job, I don't have the answers myself. I could get nothing done without my community, without having people tell me what's going on in the community and letting me know. Churches have so much power because generally Christians and people who go to church want to do the right thing. And you guys have the ability to come together and combat this kind of stuff. So I encourage you guys to do that if you have it in you. Locations common to human trafficking. How many people get the brothels in mind, right? How many people think of bars or nightclubs or whatever? What about the schoolyards? Never think of that. What about children who are actively being trafficked, that are going to school and are peer-to-peer traffickers? They're being groomed to groom their children. That happens. We hear about it all the time, the story of the one time you're filing a missing person report because my kid didn't come home. Why is that? Were they abducted? Or did they go willingly and unknowingly? So that's just another thing to look at, is those kind of situations happen and do exist. Most people who are trafficked in their own communities. About 52% of the human trafficking that goes on within your own community. Most people that are human trafficked know the traffickers. They're either related to them or have an intimate relationship with them. A lot of the children, like the story we heard earlier, these people spend a lot of time, they picked them out and now they're grooming them with candy, with gifts, with things. And if there's not adults around paying attention to what's going on with somebody who's an adult that should be talking to children in the first place, if there's nobody there to intervene or say, hey, that's not right, don't do that. Or do you know that child? You know what's gonna happen. Control mechanisms, it can be coercion through fear, intimidation, threats, violence. Anything you can think, if you just put yourself in that mindset and you think, what would I do if I was given a situation? Let's say somebody threatened that if you don't go rob that bank, we'll kill your kids, and we got them. What are you gonna do? I'm gonna be robbing the bank because I wanna see my kid live. I don't want my kid harmed. So it's situations like that, probably not so extreme, where people who are traffickers know the craft. They either know how to groom somebody through that contact, and it could be in chat rooms, it could be in games, it could be, you know, in life. We know it's happened in some churches. So the thing is to pay attention to those kind of things and understand that it goes on, and those control mechanisms are real. Because when I finally broke into the street vendors, and I had enough people that were telling me what was going on, I had nobody that would testify to it because they were so scared. And the way law enforcement works is, if you're not willing to tell me a story that I can put on paper, present it in a court of law, and then you testify against somebody, nothing's gonna be done. So that's really hard, is when you have victims that are so afraid to talk that you're not gonna get anything out of them. So that's just something else to consider. I have another story of coercion. I don't know if you guys are familiar with outlaw motorcycle clubs. Is anybody not familiar with the outlaw motorcycle clubs? Those guys that wear the patches on their back and ride those Harleys down the freeway, and usually packs of 30, very intimidating. I had a situation where a single mom working for the DMV was contacted by one of those guys. Very charming guy. He courted her, did all the things a gentleman would do, until he gained her trust and she started falling in love. And came to a point where they wanted something from her. She worked for the DMV. Those guys, to have access into the DMV is great for them, because they can steal motorcycles, get them registered, get VIN numbers and all that stuff, wash it clean in the system and make profit off of it. So she was a target. She was picked out, basically. When the courtship was over, it ended violently, and this is how it happened. He courted her, got to know her daughter, got to know her mom, got to know everything about her, all her friends, where she worked, and then invited her to a mountain trip up at Bass Lake, and said, we're gonna have fun, we're gonna be there for about a week, you know, just us and, you know, a few of the other people from the club, have a good time. So they rented a cabin and went up there with about 15 other people, other females that were also, had been put into this life and had already been brainwashed in turn. After the first night, they beat her bad, really bad, and would not let her go. And then put her with the females in the group, and the females were there kind of grooming her, saying, hey, look, these people are serious. They're gonna do what they say they're gonna do. If you don't comply, they will kill you. They will kill your daughter. So just go with it. It'll make it easier on you. Then they proceeded to perform sexual acts, everybody that was there, on her for the next couple of days. They gave her drugs. They just messed her up mentally. They conquered her. And then took her back home, said, if you tell anybody, you know what we're gonna do. She ended up working for them for the next 4 years until she took her life. So that's another sad aspect of what we're talking about. But I just encourage all of you, you're here for a reason. You are here because you care, because you wanna make a difference. You know, I see everybody in this room. You guys are professional people. You have good hearts, and that's all it's gonna take. So I just encourage you to reach out, to do what you can, to get involved with the communities. It's a great thing to have the mayor here. You know, that's a wealth of information and resources right there. But you guys can combat this. And you know, again, like I said, if you're waiting on law enforcement to do it, we're not gonna do it. We're here to pick up pieces. We're not here to actually get ahead of it and solve problems. Because we can't. We need the community behind us. And if you know what happened over the last 4 or 5 years, the community's not really behind law enforcement anymore. And I don't know what to do about that. Other than to keep showing up, keep spreading the word, keep delivering the message. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Sergeant. Thank you for your stories and your experience and sharing all that with us. I know that was heavy, but it's needed to hear because that is what tonight is all about. Before we bring out dinner is going to be served very shortly. I know a lot of you are hungry. I just do want to call to attention to on your tables, there are quotes. These quotes are written by children in Egypt who are part of the program Leading the Jar. Now, if we could